Well, looky what we have here.
Welcome back to the Hubbard's Handmade Shop. I am Ryan Hubbard. This is the second project that I've made from this dumpster diving trip. And in that trip, I found these letters that just happened to spell my daughter's name. After I got my piece of plywood painted black for the background, I decided to just go ahead and cover these with the pink spray paint that Ella picked. I thought that I would be able to cover the blue really nicely, but when I got to painting it, it came out a really nice pink and purple gradient and just decided to keep that. The thing that inspired me was that these metal letters already had LEDs built into them. So I decided to make a shadow box and then put LEDs behind it as well. After I got my miters cut, I used this band clamp to glue it together, and it came out pretty nicely. I just did a little bit of sanding to even up the corners and get it ready for painting. I did one coat of a similar blue spray paint, and then after that dried, I came back with the same pink spray paint and just tried to match the purple-pink gradient that the letters had. I had already tested all these letters, but I had to use some wire nuts to extend the wire, so as I was doing that, I just kept testing them to make sure that they worked, and then I used some hot glue to fix all the wires down so they wouldn't pull loose as I affixed the wires to the sign. I also used some super glue so the all thread wouldn't twist and change the distance that these are held away from the sign. When I was happy with where everything was lining up, I used a mallet to make a mark on the board and then a marker to emphasize those spots where I was going to drill holes. I put a mark right in the center to feed my wire through. I took that to the drill press and made some holes. The other part of this reclaim project is I had a bunch of these old dead hard drives. I wasn't sure what to do with them, so I took them apart just to use the silicone discs as a nice reflective background. I also saved some of the other parts and the magnets to use for other things. Feel free to leave a comment below as to other projects or ideas that you have for old hard drive parts. I really wasn't sure if I was throwing away gold or something, but they look cool in the end. Now when it came to the actual assembly, it was just a careful process of lining up all of the bolts and holes, feeding the wires through, and then just placing all of the hard drive discs where I thought they would reflect the light the best or where they fit. I wore these gloves, not because I was afraid of the glue or anything, but because the hard drive discs hold fingerprints so much that I just didn't want to mess with cleaning them after. So this really did help to keep the fingerprints off of the disc. Sometimes I would put the letter down and then fit the discs around it, and then sometimes I would put the disc down so that I could feed the wire through it, such as this case here. There were only a couple of cases where discs had to overlap, and then there was one case where I took the disc to the bandsaw and cut out just a little notch so that I could fit it in by a bolt. The hot glue worked pretty well, but there were just a couple of cases with the discs and letters where I had to go back later with some super glue because some things had popped loose. I gave it enough time to dry that I could turn it over, and then I took all of the wires that I had fed through and twisted the positive wires together and used a wire nut, and then did the same thing for all the negative wires. That just left one pair of wires to connect to my power adapter. I hope I've explained that well enough. But hey, there's plenty of other videos about how to actually do this part. After I tightened the wires into the power adapter, I plugged it in, and it worked! It was about this point I realized I hadn't left myself any way to connect the back of the plywood to the shadow box frame. So it was the Craig jig to the rescue, a few unevenly placed pocket holes, and I was able to attach them together. I then secured all my wires down, added a French cleat to attach it to the wall, and added a few more LEDs to the back so that it would glow against the wall as well. And then it was time for the big reveal. Okay, come on out.
It's so cool. I like the shiny things.
You're welcome, babe. Thanks so much for watching my mostly upcycled Ella sign project. I don't think the picture quite does it justice. It's a nice purple and pink gradient all over the whole thing. The glow from the LEDs is great, and the reflective discs really set it off. Ella was really excited. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.
Think, McFly! Think!
Says Ella. Yep, says Ella.